After the Austro-Maori War, during that brief time of peace and prosperity, when the server had entered its first golden age, they appeared. Their path would influence the path of all others. They would bring every faction to its knees and amass the largest treasure trove of loot yet seen. Their exploits would become legendary, and their name would invoke fear. They would bring the server close to the brink and leave it only a touch away from death. They were Impero Romano, led by Cranerja, the conqueror of the world and emperor of Rome. This is their story. It began on June 21st, 2019. Like all other players, their beginnings were humble. But within a single day of joining the server, Impero Romano had constructed a large coliseum on their land and filled in a large claim. Other factions started to take notice of this. Their rapid progression through the normal gameplay stages demonstrated their competence in the game, and that they possessed skill and understanding of the faction's plug-in above what the typical newcomer to the server would have. On June 25th was when the player Adderall joined Impero Romano. Up to this point, the Romans had considered getting involved in server politics and asserting themselves as a military power, but not before building up a reasonable amount of weapons and armor and picking the right faction to begin their conquest with. Adderall had other plans, however. He would immediately go on a killing spree and slaughter any player he came across not under the Roman banner. Seeing how easily he was able to do this, with unenchanted diamond gear of all things, and little pushback from the major alliances, the other Romans quickly joined in and began the conquest in earnest. They declared war on Soviet Suffolk and started attacking its members. Battles were fought in North Africa, Rome, the Communist Union of Carolina, and New England. In less than one day, Soviet Suffolk, the most powerful faction on the server, would surrender to Impero Romano and pay a tribute of 40 diamond blocks along with some other items. With Suffolk out of the way, Roman confidence increased greatly, as the largest threat to their existence had been neutralized. They would go on to raid every faction they could find, massacring the inhabitants, griefing, and looting anything of value. Any player they would come across would be killed. I myself got jumped by them in the end dimension. If anyone didn't know who Impero Romano was up to this point, they certainly knew now. This spree of violence led to the formation of an opposition alliance consisting of most of the server, with the exception of Suffolk, given that non-interference was part of their surrender terms. Greater Iberia was also absent from the coalition of nations, having formed a secret alliance with Cranerja's Rome, allowing them access to their villages at Barcelona. The next target of Impero Romano was Luxembourg. Luxembourg had been taking in many of the refugees from the Roman Purge, and was the most vocal about its opposition to Impero Romano. It was essentially the last bastion against Roman domination, and was therefore selected for destruction. Luxembourg was not a major power on the server, and was more of a ragtag collection of disenfranchised players that lacked any real organization. However, if it were to fall, Roman power would become absolute. With the Roman siege imminent, Luxembourg leadership requested aid from all other factions on the server. One of the few who responded was Chasing Jolteon from Maori, a veteran from the Austro-Maori War. The defenders would muster a force consisting of 11 players, few of which possessed maxed-out armor, otherwise known as God armor. Impero Romano would field 4 combatants, and we can reasonably assume they all had at least mid-tier enchants on their diamond gear given the amount of time they had been on the server, and the lucrative raids they profited from. Cranerja recalls the battle as follows.
When we saw the 11 players on the Dynamap waiting for us, we called in an outside friend to assist us with the raid. That brought our total count to 4. When we arrived, we fully expected their entire force to swarm us immediately, but to our surprise, that did not happen. The enemy stayed on the walls, afraid of getting picked out into a one-on-one or a one-on-two fight. They shot at us with bows, and so we dug a defensive trench outside the walls and fired back, knocking several off the walls. Some of the less cowardly players, I'm certain Chasing Jolteon was among them, came outside the walls and fought us on open ground. Jolt killed that friend we had invited at some point, and we ordered him to log off, seeing he would be more of a liability. We stayed close together, fighting bow engagements and some skirmishes in the woods. We managed to kill a few of the lesser-geared players, but had yet to find a way inside the walls. That is, until I moved along the right flank and found a hill that led up to a flaw in the wall, allowing us to enter Pearl onto it directly. All three of us grouped together on top of the wall and moved as one, using the new narrow engagement zone as a bottleneck, forcing the enemy to come at us only 2 or 3 at a time. We killed more this way and knocked others off the wall. It was a battle of attrition, and we were winning it, looting the dead for anything useful. Once we managed to whittle the enemy down like this, the Luxembourg faction power had lowered close to the point of pillaging, where 1 or 2 more kills would allow us to unclaim the grief-protected fortress, loot the place, and claim victory. The enemy knew this too, and retreated inside the houses. Adderall and Cosmocon kept chasing Jolchin busy outside the walls, and I went down inside the walls to enter Pearl Glitch inside the house the enemy was holed up in. I got in quickly and killed 3 or 4 of them before the rest surrendered. Once this was done, victory was ours.
Once the siege of Luxembourg was over, all resistance to Roman domination evaporated. No one dared raise weapons against them, hoping to keep their heads down and go unnoticed. Impero Romano would continue its indiscriminate raids. Rumors were beginning to spread that the Romans were hacking. No one could believe how quickly they had conquered the server. But at this point, everyone was too demoralized to fight back anyway. That is, except for chasing Jolchin, who would continue fighting. One skirmish between him and the Romans stands out, especially its implications for events that would later follow. He showed up to a raid they were carrying out in South America. What his original mission was is unclear, but he was using invisibility potions to shadow the Romans and remain unseen. For a moment, though, his invisibility lapsed before he could drink another potion, and the Romans discovered his presence. Chasing Joltion was quickly surrounded. In a bid to shatter the feeling of Roman invincibility, obtain proof of hacking, face them one at a time, or perhaps even to buy time, he challenged Adderall to a duel. With no allies to support the lone combatant, and being surrounded by Romans, Adderall accepted his challenge. Having his challenger at such a disadvantage likely made Adderall confident in his victory. But that's when chasing Joltion revealed what he was carrying. God apples. God apples are the enchanted variant of regular golden apples. They are extraordinarily rare, and on Geocraft there was likely less than 16 ever found in the entire course of the server's existence, and he had brought 2 of them. Being well beyond the point of escape, chasing Joltion ate one of the enchanted golden apples. His health was nearly doubled, the buffs regeneration 2, fire resistance, and resistance would be applied. Paired with his maxed gear, his strength and speed potion buffs, and his own skills in combat, it would take an impossibly skilled warrior to kill him in this state. Realizing what he had just eaten, the Romans considered converging on him to even the odds, but held back when the one-sidedness of the fight immediately became apparent. Mere seconds after it started, chasing Joltion was slain. He never had the chance to eat the second apple, and with his death, the last major armed combatant against Rome fell. Thank you for watching. This is the end of part 1, but there is much more story to tell. Impero Romano's story will continue in part 2. To watch episodes as they come out, be sure to subscribe and click the bell button for notifications.